My name is Matthew Malden. I'm 35 years old. I was one of Jehovah's Witnesses, and I am shunned.
All right, Matt. So how'd you come to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses in the first place?
I was raised one of Jehovah's Witnesses. My parents were Jehovah's Witnesses, and the details of how they came in are a little foggy to me, but I believe it was through my paternal grandparents. So my father's father. So my grandfather was one of Jehovah's Witnesses, and kind of you'll see this trend down through my father as well, but kind of on the fringes of the organization, kind of in, out, in, out, in, out. But then he became an elder. I know that. And him and my grandmother, I had my father, and he was raised to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses. And I know later he eventually left, and he had his party stages and everything. And then he came back and he found old literature, and he decided he wanted to come back to it. Now, at the same time, he had an interesting introduction into the religion because my grandfather, he was abusive. He would be an elder in the hall one time, and then he would abuse my father at home and my grandmother at home. So already, my father was seeing hypocrisy from, generations down now of Jehovah's Witnesses and what it is to be an elder and then have a separate home life. So my father introduced it to my mother, and I was raised as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. However, I was raised by a father who was disfellowshipped multiple times. So as much as, he would have loved to lead by example, that kind of wasn't how I was introduced into it. It was more of a pressure to live vicariously through me, and for me to keep the family name going. Because, Dad loves to have the attention. He loves to have everybody like him. He has that kind of personality that, he relies on others' acceptance. And the religion was his way, in. The Jehovah's Witnesses they accepted him even with his issues. And every time he would get disfellowshipped, he just wanted to come back because he loved that acceptance of just not your acts, but you as a person. We love you, and he needed that and he loved that. So there was a lot of pressure on me to keep the family name going and to kind of just keep the smile on everybody's faces. And that's kind of how I fell into it as a kid growing up in the religion.
Yeah, it's like it's practically a way of breeding little people pleasers, because you're going to have to do that in order to make everybody happy, because there's a lot riding on you and your presentation. So your dad, you said, was disfellowshipped numerous times, or multiple times, I guess. How was that on you? Because sometimes when a parent is disfellowshipped, the entire family is then treated almost like they're disfellowshipped, and here you are, a little kid, just trying to make it. Having that happening in your household, did it affect you a lot? Other than maybe making you want to, again, uphold this family tradition or name, were you treated differently because of this, I would assume?
Later in life, yes.
Okay.
As a kid, and anybody who knows Jehovah's Witnesses very well knows that there are a lot of individuals there who will give you the shirt off their back and who will rally around people. Their hospitality isn't really, there's never been an issue in question. When I was
Depending
younger,
on what congregation you're in.
well, okay, yeah, exactly. And what your background story is. And that's what I mean.
True.
And
True.
in my younger years, I can attest to they did a great job, like trying to rally around me. It was very
Okay.
awkward though, always going home and like being at the congregation and not being like allowed to even talk to my dad. And like I would be talked to by the elders if I did talk to him, like, oh, you're having way too much communication with him. Like he's my dad. Like, I, I'm like only so many years old, and I had to ask him if I could use the bathroom. Like I have to talk to him. Like, I don't know what you want from me. Like,
So you were a kid asking your dad to use the bathroom when they were acting like that was too much association. You're supposed to shun him, right?
yeah, exactly. So
At like what age? How old were you? When like, I mean, was this? Were you like 8 or something? Like, how old were you when your dad was disfellowshipped and you're getting talked to for asking to go to the bathroom?
I mean, maybe I was like 10, something like that. I mean,
So would it be safe to say that normal family relations do not are not necessarily maintained?
well, exactly. Things like that, things like after the meeting, I'd have to ask, like, he's going to go in the car. I'm like, okay, I'm going to talk to brother so and so. I'm going to talk to brother so and so, and I'll meet you in the car. They'd see that and they'd be like, oh, well, you can't have association. Make sure you have those conversations in the car before you get there. Like, oh, okay.
Yeah, we don't want to see you talk to your dad in the Kingdom Hall.
Exactly. So there was that. There was that. And then later in life, what I did want to address, and this is where I think you and I would be able to relate a little bit, is, oh yeah, then there was definitely a stigma later. By the time my dad had been disfellowshipped multiple times and we had moved multiple congregations, because we would bounce. My dad would get disfellowship from congregation A. He would not enjoy how the elders were treating him. He'd go to congregation B. He'd get reinstated at congregation B. The same thing would happen, go to C. So by the time we had done that multiple times, the congregation that I was a part of, I'll say, the one elder just did not like my family, did not like me. And multiple times in counsel, that's the word they like to use, counsel that he would give me, which is constructive criticism, as we would say. He would tell me that, he doesn't want me to become like my father, or that I'm acting like my father, and that I'm going to end up being like my father. And I'm like, I, I was, and here I am, like, 18, 19 years old, and I'm trying to advance in the congregation. And I'm being told by, the coordinator that, like, compared to my father. So, that was humiliating. And it was, I had to be the poster child when I was a kid. When I was young growing up, I had my father enroll me in the school, which is where we give our speeches and our talks, and I had to be enrolled to give those 5-minute parts when I was 6 years old. And I practiced by my father put a laundry hamper in front of me and taped a wooden spoon in front of it, so it looked like a microphone on a podium.
Okay.
Yep. And I had to like practice, and we had a minute introduction, and here I am teaching at 6 years old about the Bible, and then I had to read the part for 3 minutes, and then a minute conclusion. And that was at 6. And I had been trying to do everything perfectly, like, since that age, and I was told by my father, like, read slower. If you read too fast, I'll pull you off the school. So immediately it's just this pressure to be perfect, read at the right pace. The school, when they enroll you in that school, it's every time you get a part, you have to focus on one counsel point. And you got to make sure that you nail that counsel point. So introductions one day, conclusions one day. And it's all built around teaching you to go out door to door and just be able to, influence people. And there's a lot of pressure to get really good at public speaking. And that's why a lot of people say that Jehovah's Witnesses are very good public speakers, because they're born into it. It's a rite of passage. You have to be. But anyway, I say all that to say that I did all that work, and then I get up to my late teens, and I'm being held back because of somebody's opinion of my disfellowshipped father. So I hope that answers your question. It
Yeah,
did.
no,
It did absolutely affect me.
sure. Yeah. And I'm sure every time your dad, well, it depends. Some congregations will love bomb you when you come back. If you've been disfellowshipped, and then others will still kind of keep you at arm's length, give you the Heisman Trophy pose, give you a nice stiff arm there because they're like, I don't know about you yet. So I'm sure it depends on the congregation. You don't have to say, and I'm not trying to pry, but it may be relevant to the story or something. Was there something in particular your dad kept getting in trouble for that you were observing, or was it like abuse in the household because he came from an abusive household or something that was part of his journey?
My father had vices, lots of vices. He has an addictive personality, and I feel bad for the poor guy.
Okay.
I mean, he struggles with that, and he did smoke. He did drink, and it just couldn't be looked upon. And there isn't an understanding of addiction in the
No.
religion, and how it works on people's minds. And I saw my father fight to try and quit. I saw him fail. When he failed, um, you know, he struggled to really be, a source of spiritual comfort. But he had his moments where he was fighting too. Um, he's still fighting right now. He's currently in the religion right now. He's currently active in it. And even though we have our differences in how we feel about it, I've told him where I stand, and I know where he stands. But I guess, had there been an understanding of addiction and what it takes mentally, and what it actually requires to break, you're talking, you smoke 1, 2, 3 cigarettes, you got to go in front of a committee for that. Now imagine you're addicted to cigarettes and you're trying to quit, and you have to go clean for 6 months to a year before you're allowed to speak to your friends again. I've never
That
smoked, but I can't
fuels
imagine.
addiction.
Exactly.
Shame fuels addiction.
Yeah.
And so the continuing to shame someone for the thing that they're struggling with, and then because they lack any understanding of addiction, they see it purely as, they moralize everything. Everything is a matter of choice, as though we as humans have complete control over all choices in life, and no one ever does anything because of their hormones, biology, brain chemistry, whatever, past circumstances, all those things. They just have literally no understanding of it. But at the same time, I mean, look at your dad. Isn't he addicted to the truth? I mean, it treats him badly, and yet he continues to go back to it over and over and over again.
Yeah.
That's that you can't miss a meeting. You have to go there. You start having withdrawals if you go on vacation and you don't go to a Kingdom Hall. It's the same thing. It's just you're addicted to an ideology and a performative based cult instead of a particular substance, but it's still giving people some hits of dopamine along the way and certain things. It's an escape in and of itself, just like anything, like alcohol or cigarettes or drugs or whatever could be an escape. It's its own escape.
And I completely agree with that. And it makes you think of something we had kind of just offline talked about, just about it's amazing how Jehovah's Witnesses find these individuals who need them for certain reasons. And my father's somebody who needs that. He needs support. He loves validation. He loves being told that he's doing a good job. And he's also been through a very, very rough life. Jehovah's Witnesses have a very, very good way of finding people who have been through the roughest times in their lives and converting them into their religion, because it offers hope, it offers happiness, it offers family, it offers community. And a lot of individuals who join this religion are looking for all of those things when they start, and they're getting it. The shun part comes in way, way later. But when they get into it, it's like, oh, this like angel of light, and then the teeth get to sink in, and then they're stuck. And that's what I feel about with my father. I mean, we have different ideas now. He knows that I'm done, and I've moved in. I'm not going back. But he still wants to keep going. He still wants that validation, that community, that family. And as I'm sure I'll talk about moving forward, when you do leave it, it's the scariest, most terrifying thing you could imagine. So I see why he still has that desire to like make it work. The roots are so deep.
Well, the roots are deep, but we're also taught to chase love and acceptance.
Yeah.
Not to actually have it. We're taught to chase it because you can never be good enough in the organization. You can never be good enough for Jehovah. Even if you do all the things that he wants you to do, probably you may be concealed in the day of his great anger. So, you're always chasing love and chasing acceptance. I mean, this organization has shunned your father time and time again. So it's not some beacon of acceptance and love, but he's used to chasing it. So he's just on that hamster wheel, continuing to chase something, but not really ever getting anywhere. And what people are looking for, like you said, when they enter a group like this, is certainty, purpose, and community. And like you said, at first it feels like this angel of light. You've been love bombed, and it feels so wonderful. And it allows you to escape from your problems because, I mean, if you have any issues in life, Jehovah's going to handle them for you at Armageddon. You don't have to look at it. You don't have to do any healing. You don't have to move forward or ever learn how to survive on your own. You just throw your burdens on a character, on Jehovah, and then you are absolved of any responsibility for some of those things. But then, of course, you're being held to standards that are strictly rigid your entire life, and then shunned repeatedly for something. I could accept you. I don't know all your dad's issues, but in the world around him, if he were to make real friends, they could accept him even for his predilections or dysfunctions or whatever. People could accept him. I don't have to shun your father just because he smokes, right? He could have real friends, and he could have people that really accept him for who he is, even though he's a flawed human being that hurts and suffers and escapes into some things that aren't healthy maybe at times. But in Jehovah's Witnesses, that friendship is so small and it's so closed off. Nobody's truly got their arms open for you. They're just like, well, hey, as long as you fit in this tiny little box, I'll give you a hug. But as soon as you go outside of it, I can't really accept you.
Well, and I think about a little bit of hypocrisy with addiction and, like the view of the world, right? So Jehovah's Witnesses have this view of the world, and anybody who's not a Jehovah's Witness is called worldly. Mm-hmm. So that's a negative term. Some people are like, yeah, I live on earth. Like, no, it's not what they mean. No,
right.
You're non-godly, earthly, animal, demonic. No, you're worldly. That's bad. And so, he would go through addiction and he would get disfellowshipped, and he couldn't talk to anybody at the Kingdom Hall. But then they're like, well, I don't know. how they felt about him going to AA. I mean, he's going to AA and he's making these sponsors and these friends and everything. But then once he's clean, he can't keep relying on them.
He's got to drop
So
them.
he's got to drop them. So what do? Because you're not allowed to talk to the world. So how do you get free of addiction? By yourself. I mean, you put yourself in solitary confinement, except solitary confinement has cigarettes all around it. And then they say quit.
Well, and Matt, I mean, who's his true friends there? The people at AA actually care for him and are helping him, whereas
Exactly.
Jehovah's Witnesses are abandoning him and judging him. You know, they're these awful, terrible, worldly people that are there for your dad at his lowest point to try to help him, versus, you know, Jehovah's Witnesses who every time your dad has a problem, kick him to the curb.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about conditional love.
Exactly.
Very sad. So, you know, back to you. So, you know, you're a little kid being raised in all this. Obviously, there's a lot of pressure on you. You're talking about the congregation and everything, or in your family. What was growing up like for you, as far as, well, let's start in your home life. What was it like at home? Was kind of the tenor of the household? Were you all a happy family? Was there a lot of struggle? What was it like for you being a little kid growing up? And were you all this like super zealous family as well, trying to make up for anything?
Wow, that's a loaded. That's good. That's a good question. We were not the poster family of Jehovah's Witnesses. We were not. However, I tried my best to be the poster child. And to a degree, I succeeded with that. You know, my mom did okay with it. She's no longer with the religion right now. She did okay with it. She was kind of following my dad. And again, my dad was just in, out, in, out, in, out. And so it left a lot of struggles in the home life, a lot of arguing, a lot of fighting. You know, vices are expensive. They're very, very expensive. And when you're a low income family and my mother's expected to make all the bills just get paid magically, and if not, it's her fault, you can imagine that every day is going to be turmoil. And, you know, all that's going on in the background, but then we go to the meetings and we're supposed to smile and, you know, let's be all happy and perfect and encourage the friends, you know. And how's home life? Home life for me growing up was basically doing whatever my father told me to do. And even, you know, inside and outside the home, especially inside the religion, like when I would go to meetings, I would have a almost like a debriefing at the end of the day where I'd go to meetings, my dad would see me talk to people, and then afterwards I'd get pulled in and be like, okay, what did you say to so-and-so? What did you say to so-and-so? Did you talk about me? Why not? Why did you say something about you? Why didn't you tell me I was a good dad? Did you? And it's like, whoa. So that was my childhood growing up, was to go to the meetings and try and look good. School was interesting. You know, you're taught that you're not allowed to have friends at school. So I grew up awkward. I still find myself socially awkward, you know, and it just stems from this, like, avoid the world. I wasn't really, we weren't supposed to play sports. It was definitely discouraged, and I wasn't allowed to get baptized until I stopped. But
You mean playing sports at all, or are you talking about playing sport like I was allowed to play
recreationally,
sports, but just not like on a worldly team?
there you go. So that way.
Okay.
So I wasn't allowed to play on any type of like organized teams,
Okay.
because of, you know, you would have to have association with worldly people. I don't know how somebody's going to convince me to like take drugs while I'm kicking a soccer ball, but apparently there's a real connection.
How it starts. Soccer is the gateway drug.
You know, I guess kicking a ball, next thing you know, you're in jail for 5 to 10. But anyway, but I wasn't allowed to do that, even though my parents were they were lenient because they weren't the poster family. So I played like in second grade, and then I played in maybe junior high for a couple of years. And then I was about to get baptized at like 14, 15. And then the elders were like, you really should quit. If you want to be one of Jehovah's people, if you want to be one of his servants, how can you really say that you're one of his servants if you're still like associating and playing with the world? Okay. I thought you're dedicating your life to him. If your life is that important to you, you're telling me you can't give up a sport, a soccer ball means that much to you. If you want, and then they organize like a soccer game with like 4-on-4 for me that I could like play, and like, we'll play soccer with you by ourselves. I'm like,
oh, wow. I'm surprised they even did that.
well,
Wow.
They were convinced. They wanted me in.
It was it right. You're either in or you're out, and it's like you're either with us or you're with them, and you have to choose. Who is your allegiance to? It's not about Jehovah, is it?
Mm-mm. Yeah.
Wow. So then it's school that's where you were playing soccer and such. So did you, at least we'll get to the point of baptism, but prior to baptism, were you finding it was school kind of? Did you enjoy school? Were you having some fun there that maybe you weren't having in the congregation? Or,
you make a good point. I haven't really thought about that prior to that question, but yeah, I think I was. I did well in school. Always, even in my later life, when I was in high school, I had to work 3 jobs while going to high school, and it was okay. I still maintained like a 3.8 GPA throughout high school. Even doing all that, having no time for homework except for on the bus. But yeah, I guess school afforded me an out. I was able to have friends there, even though I couldn't really hang out with them after school. I still had friends there, just a bigger group. And I could be myself a little bit, I didn't have to be so rigid, intense.
yeah, school can be a respite for some JW kids. They find it a respite because it's a little bit of a break, a little bit of a chance to let your hair down, depending on who's around and depending on a lot of circumstances. But it sounds like it sounds like you were a smart kid too. I mean, you were making good grades.
The thing is too is, and I attest to good grades to a lot of how I was raised. You kind of mentioned earlier that Jehovah's Witnesses are like performance based. It's like we have performance standards that we have to meet. If you're going to go preaching, you should be doing 10 hours a month at least. If you're going to be a pioneer, you should be doing 50, 70. So there's performance standards. And so when I went into school, I viewed it the same way as I did my religion. There's performance standards. So I better get an A on my test. Anything else than that is lower.
But while I agree, it's just like the school. A lot of people be like, well, Jehovah's Witnesses made us excellent public speakers. And certainly they gave us an opportunity for that. But I mean, there are people who are in the school for 50 years who can't speak their way out of a paper bag. And that's okay, because you have to bring something. You have to bring an aptitude to it. Working at it alone doesn't necessarily make everyone a great public speaker. And we don't all have to be, and that's okay. But like, we all had the same performance standards, but not everyone excelled in school. And so you still had to bring something to it. You had an innate ability, a certain level of intelligence, whatever it was that allowed you to excel there, because certainly not all witness kids excel in school. And so I just say that just to say, don't throw away your participation in it as your individual self, because although there were these perfectionistic standards that a lot of us took away from a lot of that JW life, you still, just naturally brought some certain things to it yourself. You obviously must have been a pretty bright kid to be able to keep up, especially with everything else you were doing.
Well, I tried, and I tried to
Yeah.
put the work into it as well. I've tried to always have like a strong work ethic, and I remember, times growing up where there'd be a fight at home, and at home, unfortunately, again, people didn't know this in the congregation, but at 12 years old, I would have to be involved in my parents' arguments. I'd get woken up in the middle of the night and they'd be
Mm.
like, my father would be like, tell your mom this, go tell her this, go do that, go do this. And they'd be fighting. And I'd have these assignments from my dad to go do, as like to tell my mom, and like get in the middle of the argument at night. And I'd miss the bus in the morning because I'd oversleep because I didn't get any sleep that night. And I'd ride my bike, which was like maybe like a 45-minute bike ride. I just ride myself to school, and just so I could make my test that day because I knew I had a test. So I don't know.
Were you involved in the fights because he was disfellowshipped and shunned in some way? Or was he just
No,
using you as a go-between?
yeah, we'll go with option B there.
That is extremely abusive. Yeah, that's not healthy. That's
No.
that's
So
that's
yeah,
very
that's
rough.
that's how I grew up. And then when I was 14, my parents did get divorced, and I stayed with my father actually. My father had the support of his mother as well. During the divorce, my mother didn't really have much support at all. So it was dad and grandma. And grandma was a very, very strong Jehovah's Witness, strongest one of anybody in the family. She lives, breathes, bleeds, and will die with that religion. And I'm breaking her heart right now by not being a part of it. But I was basically then from 14 on, was going to be working 3 jobs through high school because my father worked as a waiter and didn't make much money. Living with him in the trailer park, and then part time with my mom and her small, my grandma in her small little apartment. And again, still had to be the perfect witness, still to make my time, in the ministry, still had to keep doing my talks, keep trying to advance and keep doing more. And then, yeah, I mean, I'm sure we'll get into more moving forward into adulthood, but yeah, growing up, once mom left, things got a little bit tougher,
Because it was
because
just you and your dad now?
yeah,
And also, you said at 14 is when you got baptized?
yeah. So I was basically started living with my dad, and she ended up being completely forced out of the picture from me. Um, we reconnected now. We'll talk about it later maybe, but she was forced out of the picture completely. So that was hard for me. I mean, that was my mother, and even though like she wasn't the one who was really super behind the religion, I had the strongest connection with her. So she left the religion, she left the family, and I wasn't really allowed to have contact with her. Um, so once that happened, it was just me and dad, and you know those vices didn't go away; they only increased. He did prison time when I was about like 16 or 17, so I was kind of on my own with my grandmother. Um, and
But heaven forbid you have any contact with your mother. Your
oh
dad's in
yeah,
prison, but let's not have any contact with your mother.
no, it became my
Um,
grandmother's responsibility at that point to take care of me.
wow. Did you get bad? And I'm not going to assume. I'm not going to assume anything here. So, why did you get baptized at 14? Um, what prompted that?
Um, you know what? I have to say the honest story is I kind of was raised as a do-gooder, and
Of
like
course.
you're raised to like that baptism is the ultimate goal, right? It's the
Mhm.
ultimate goal to dedicate your life to God. That means your life is no longer your own; it belongs to Him, and you have succeeded. You have done it. You've given it to Him. So I liked that concept, and then people were telling me when my parents split that this is like some huge trial for me. And that Satan's trying me. Satan's trying me. You're like Job. And they start reading Job to me and how I'm being tested. And I thought to myself, like, what better time to say, well, forget you, Satan, by getting baptized. So I'm going to take all these trials and all this encouragement and everything. I'm going to turn it into something positive, and I'm going to dedicate my life to God. So that's probably the best answer I could give to that question.
That's what I was assuming, that the situation was being exploited to some degree. Here you are, you're a 14-year-old kid, your parents are splitting, your mom is leaving, quote, the truth. And so, now, little Matt, it's your chance to show that you're going to take a stand. You're going to do this thing. And again, we were all raised as people pleasers. Everything you're talking about here with your dad, and I mean, he's got all these addictions. I'm sure even without that aspect, take away any of the aspect of the vices and his addictions and such, and just being raised one of Jehovah's Witnesses often makes us codependent. But then add in the aspect of all of the addictions and your dad's authoritarian methodology of the way he treated you and raised you, it's going to lead into more codependency. And so here you are at 14. What chance do you have but to make that decision in those moments? You've been born and bred and raised, and everything has been leading up to that. And now you have other adults around you exploiting one of the more vulnerable times in a kid's life.
Well, and you made me think about this one picture. I think it's in the, I want to say it's in the What Does the Bible Really Teach book. And it's a picture of parents sending their kid out and kicking him out of the house because he was disfellowshipped. And the kid doesn't look like he's any older than 17, 18 years old. Like, they let him get as old as he could possibly get, and they sent him out. He's got his bags packed and everything, and won't even look at his parents, and they're sending him out. And that's what you're raised to. That's the end game if you're not baptized, or if you get disfellowshipped, or if you're doing anything other than what they tell you to do. The end goal is at 18, you're out, you get kicked out.
And yes, absolutely. And isn't that picture, if it's the one that I'm thinking of, isn't that picture all about the parents' sorrow and not the
crying.
Poor kid that just got thrown out on the goddamn streets? Like,
yeah,
like it's like, screw the kid who just got thrown out on his eyes. But let's feel sorry for mom and dad here, because really it's all about them.
You nailed it. That is exactly it. Mom's like sitting there with dad and they're crying and everything. And the poor kid, we don't even follow up with him. We don't know if he got hit by a bus about the kid.
But, no, and then the narrative is Matt left us and it's Matt's fault that we are hurting, not, oh, it's our own beliefs that are leading to our pain, because nobody else has to shun their kids. It's our beliefs. It's our chosen way of life that is causing us the pain, not Matt.
Mm-hmm.
Matt didn't hurt anybody. Mm-hmm. They have narrow, intolerant beliefs, and that is what it is that is causing all of their pain, because other people, their kids can go off and leave the house or change their mind or leave a religion, and it doesn't have to be the end of the world.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So you definitely hit a really strong point there. Just that there's definitely a huge focus there on just the parents, and
it's all about the witnesses.
It's all about
the witnesses. They're consumed with their own feelings. They don't care about anybody else's feelings. They don't. I still remember the moment in my life when I realized that I had shunned my brother for like 13 years or whatever. And I just remember the moment, like 11, 12 years into that, when I was reading something about emotional abuse, and it just dawned on me, oh, holy crap, what did we do to him? Like, Jehovah's Witnesses are so narcissistic and so caught up in themselves, there's no stopping to think about, how does what I am doing to another person, which is shunning, it's an act that you do to someone else. How is this act of shunning affecting this person that I'm shunning? never even thought about it. It was all about us and how hurt we were about that person, and no inkling of, oh my God, we are totally emotionally extorting this person. And we are pretty horrible right now.
Yeah, but we're also taught at the same time that we're helping the person.
Well, of course.
That's the verbiage. It's like
part of the gaslighting.
Yeah, they're not going to come back to God. They're not going to have a good, happy life unless you stop talking to them. Like if you speak to them, all they're going to do is keep smoking cigarettes. All they're going to do is, keep living with their girlfriend. And you know what? God's going to kill them. So do you really want to share in their bloodshed? Don't you think it's better if you just don't speak to them and help them to come back?
Yeah. And I hope anybody listening can hear, just because you just articulated very well the Jehovah's Witness viewpoint, but how distorted that is, how utterly distorted it is to say that. Because it's all, again, about you. It's to say that shunning is love is so distorted. It's not loving. Does it? I don't know. You're shunned today. How loving does it feel?
No, I find much more love out here in the world. Do you have the warm fuzzies? No, I find much more love out here in the world right now. I'll tell you that much.
Right. It's not loving, but that's part of gaslighting. As you know, when someone is gaslighting someone, their words and their actions are incongruent, and this is one of those examples. As shunning is loving, that's not congruent. It's not that doesn't add up. It's very distorted. So here you are, a 14-year-old kid, people pleaser, parents getting divorced, and then everybody's like, hey, this is your chance, you're being tested by Satan. So you get baptized. Did that ratchet up the pressure now, between, so now it's just you and your dad, and now you're a baptized young brother, so you can do more in the congregation. Did that ratchet up the pressure on you?
Oh, it did. Because, think about what happens to 14, 15, 16-year-old boys as far as their desires. Mm-hmm. And, all of a sudden, now it's like girls are noticing you, and you can't really do anything about that until you marry somebody. So yeah, that was very, very difficult. And, growing up in a trailer park, there was a lot of strange opportunity there. And it was a lot of pressure, and I had to avoid it. Don't go with the girls. Don't go with the girls. Leave the girls alone. All that. That was very difficult. And then I had these aspirations. I wanted to be like the perfect witness. And then I heard about this Bethel, the headquarters,
the pinnacle of witness existence.
There's no way. Like, and then you're like, it's like you tell yourself, like, there's no way I could make it. No, you can't make it in there. Like, it's hard to make it, And I've taken tours before. I've seen it. I've seen the headquarters of the organization, and they offer you like that you can live there, you can eat there. They give you free room and board. They have amazing friends, a great spiritual program. You work for a little bit, and then so yeah. So I was like, oh, there it is. That's my goal. So usually to do that, you got to start by pioneering, which is that's their term for doing, multiple hours per month, a requirement, an hour requirement per month, a big chunk, to be able to be considered for the headquarters. So after graduating, I did not have the chance to jump right into pioneering. I wanted to really bad. I was going to be the 18-year-old pioneer. But my father was involved in a car accident. He broke a bone in his neck, and he was out of work for a year after extensive surgery where they infused a bone from his hip into his neck. So I had to basically take over the family expenses, and I had to go work full time.
Is this when you were working 3 jobs? And
that was after. No, 3 jobs was just through high school.
Well, that was just through high school? And was that just to help your father make bills?
Yeah.
Was your dad working?
Yeah, as a waiter. He didn't make much though.
Okay.
And he had his vices too, so the racks up the bills.
So you were basically then a little workaholic.
Yeah.
I would assume, trying to survive
Yes.
from the age of what, 16 when you could work to when you graduated?
I had illegal jobs at 12. I
Uh,
mean,
okay.
nothing crazy, but just like silly stuff. Like, people would just like give me money under the
Paid under the
table.
table.
Yeah. I mean, nothing crazy, but just silly stuff like that.
Okay. So all this working and working from the time you're 12, why were you working at 12? Was that to just for fun money, or did you have to work to support the household?
Groceries. We were out of grocery money because
Okay. Okay.
my dad's gambling pick that week didn't work, and
Oh gosh.
so we
Okay.
were out $300. So it was either my mom wasn't allowed to work weekends. It was a weekend. There was some type of like labor job, and my dad was like, you should go do it. So some nice Korean sister picked me up and drove me and did some manual labor, putting lubricant on automotive parts. And then she gave me some money, drove me home, and then I gave it to my parents and they bought groceries.
Oh wow, dude. I'm sorry. That's tough way to grow up. And one of the reasons I digressed towards that is that you could see the working all the time, devoting your life to things that aren't even your own necessarily. I mean, your parents are supposed to buy your groceries at 12 years old. You're not supposed to have to go get under the table labor so that you can buy the groceries so that your dad can gamble. And so you're having this to work and work and work and work. Now you're 18, your dad is down because of this accident or whatever, and now you're gonna have to work full time. Um, and did that so that put the damper on your Bethel dreams? I would assume, at least for a
Sure
minute.
did. I wanted to be because you can apply for Bethel when you're 19, and I wanted to be the 19-year-old applicant. So it did because I wanted to start pioneering and I couldn't. So I get into the full-time work mode. I start in construction where I went to trade school because Jehovah's Witnesses are encouraged not to really go to college. So I went to trade school. So it was all during my high school, time slot. So I didn't have to go to any additional school for that, for construction trades. So I did construction for a year. And then at 19, my dad kind of got to the point of where he was back on his feet, right? Now he's back to work. He's remarried. They're on their own. They have enough money to make ends meet. I'm good to go. I can move out on my own. So I move out and I rent a room inside a house of a family of Jehovah's Witnesses. They give me some cheap rent, like $150 a month, like just to let me stay there and like, give me a nice place to live. And I was already caught up in the full-time work at that point. So I kind of just kept going for a few years because I had kind of forgotten about the Bethel dream. But then come 21, I remembered it. I went to one of the circuit assemblies and they're like, young people, think about all that, like think about all that Jehovah has done for you. Now think to yourself, what have I done for Jehovah? Now, if you can't answer that question with any type of certainty and confidence, then maybe you're not doing enough. So I heard that and I thought to myself, I'm not doing enough. So I quit my job. I was doing really well in my job. And they had paid for my schooling, which Jehovah's Witnesses will let you get away with like paid schooling through work. That's kind of allowed. So I got my associate's degree through work. I was doing well in my career and I decided I needed to quit. And I was going to quit, start pioneering, and move to Mexico to serve where the need was greater. So that was the next step in life.
So did you think that moving to Mexico to serve where the need was greater would help you get into Bethel? Like it would be this extra little thing on your resume that maybe the other Pioneer brothers didn't have?
Absolutely.
Smart.
Yeah. In fact, it's funny because like when I went to apply, I remember the application process. It was one of the governing body members conducted the meeting, and it was like 100 Bethelites, like or no 100 people there for the Bethel meeting, and they all wanted to be Bethelites, right? At the end of the process, they're like, if you want an application, come up front. The whole place left except for like 3 people. And like 2 of them were women, were they call sisters. And, you know, basically like they have a harder time getting into Bethel.
Yeah, very little chance.
Very little chance. So I'm like, well, there's only one other guy here. I'm going to go ahead and drop my application in. Everybody's scared. So I grabbed it, I applied, dropped it in, and then it was like, well, I'll move to Mexico because you're not going to get called like next day. It's going to take probably like 8 months to a year. So I was like, I'll just go to Mexico and see if that like helps my chances. So yeah, it definitely was on my mind that I figured while I'm waiting, it would help me to kind of like grow a little bit. And then, because when you're out there in these congregations that are smaller, you have more responsibility, right? And it's exciting. Yeah. I had
think of how much more you can work.
Yes, exactly right. You nailed it. And you're taught that like slave labor is exciting. So I was excited I could do more. So yeah, I had become a ministerial servant right before I left. And then I left, did 8 to 9 months, I think, there in Mexico. And then that's when I got the phone call that they're ready for me in Bethel. And that's when I thought I had like reached, like, that's it. That's the goal. Like I did it. Like it can't get any better than this. This is like, you've got like a slim chance, like 0.2% chance to make it. So it's kind of amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I have to say, I'm surprised, or maybe I shouldn't be surprised. I've never been to any of those Bethel meetings at the assemblies. I remember they would always have them. I always knew I didn't want to be anywhere near them because a lot of people wanted me to go to Bethel. And I knew that I didn't want to give anybody false hope because I had literally no desire to go to Bethel. And so I've never been to one. But you saying that most of the people just left and didn't even pick up an application, that's interesting to me. I never thought about that. I mean, I guess just even going to that meeting is kind of like showy, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Much of being one of Jehovah's Witnesses is about appearance, and I'm sure just even going to that, a lot of people take notice that you went to it. But actually taking the step and applying to go to that place, yeah, like you said, a lot of people were probably scared at the realities of that. It just felt good to go into the meeting or whatever. Maybe people were just curious. I was never that curious.
Yeah.
I was afraid I was going to get sucked in. But but I can see that is an interesting thing to think about. But you know, they only have limited spots. Even though there was only a few of you applying, there's very limited spots in how many people they actually take.
Oh yeah.
So what was it like when you got accepted? I mean, like, were you like, did people throw a party for you? And I mean, because I know that I've been to one of those parties, and it can be a pretty big deal. So
yeah, I had a little going away thing. I came back home for like 2 weeks. So I flew from Mexico back to Ohio. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio originally. And I flew back to Cleveland and stayed there for a couple of weeks, like unpacked all my stuff, repacked all the stuff that I thought I could take. And, you know, me and 2 buddies just drove out there and they dropped me off. And yeah, there's a little party. It was exciting. My friends were sending me off. It was, there's a lot of status, you know, in that organization. You know, you have pioneers. It's like, oh man, they're a pioneer couple. You have circuit overseers, like, oh my gosh, sub CEOs, you know. You have all these different titles, Bethelites, special pioneers, commuter Bethelites now. And it's like there's so much status to it. So it was so exciting to be accepted into this new venture. And it was like everything would be taken care of for you. Everything would be taken care of for you. It's all you got to do is just show up. Like, we'll give you a place to stay. We'll give you some roommates. We'll give you a little place to live. We'll feed you. You just got to work. and it'll be great. And you'll get the best spiritual food possible. You'll get talks from governing body members, talks from branch committee members. You'll get all these amazing discussions every morning. You have to wake up at 7, be at morning worship by 7:15, be ready for your talk that morning. So yeah, it was super thrilling for me at the time. I felt like I had done it. I remember like listening to like music that just like made me feel emotional, and just like I was crying because I'm like getting accepted to this place. And I gotta say it was euphoric to a degree. And I was made to believe that like this place would define like my future career as a Jehovah's Witness. There's like so much more I could do at this point. So yeah, that was an exciting time with where
So
I was
how did
at.
your dad take it? Your dad was pushing you for so long and kind of living vicariously through you. So was he over the moon when he heard that you got accepted into Bethel? Because now he's got a Bethelite son.
I think the only person more excited than me was him. Yeah. He was thrilled. At the time, I I want to say there was definitely one point when I was in Bethel that he was inside the organization. He wasn't as fellowshipped, and it may have been when I was initially accepted, or it may have been a little bit after that. But he did come up and visit me, and like there's like little lounges you can rent there for like little Bethelite parties and stuff like that. And we rented like some lounges and stuff so that he could like meet some of the other Bethelites.
Wait a minute, you have to rent a lounge? You have to
Reserve.
Oh, okay. Okay, when you said rent, I was like, you've got to pay to...
No, you reserve it.
Okay.
You got to pay for everything else. But anyway, no, you reserve a lounge. So you reserve a lounge, come in. He's having a great time. He had a blast. He was like the center of attention. He loved it. It was a good time for him. So he was absolutely over the moon. So was my grandmother. She was in shock, like that I got accepted. So yeah, everybody was so thrilled, and it was just like I had to succeed now, like it's this exciting, thrilling event now. It's like you've got this now. Let's go. Let's succeed.
Wow. So what's it like your first day at Bethel? So you're super excited, you're euphoric, as you said, and you go up there. I think you said your friends dropped you off up there.
Yep.
What, I don't know, for somebody who's never been, to headquarters, I guess, is there like an intake process? Is it a...
Yeah, there's about a week-long orientation process.
Okay.
Yeah, so they bring you in. You get to see your room first, put your stuff away, like day one, and then you can go, because day one you're basically just checking in, and you can just go eat, do whatever you want to do. Then you start going through like different meetings and procedures and like dining room etiquette, like because there's a huge dining room etiquette there. Like each table seats 10 people. You got to pass a certain way. There's a certain etiquette for when the things are empty and how to clean all that up. Then you got to go through laundry training, how to organize all of your laundry and put it in the bags according to their procedures and standards so that the laundry department can process it. Then you start learning more. You start taking more tours throughout the different complexes and areas. And then you're given your assignment usually about like a week into it or a couple days into it. And then maybe like a weekend, you report to your assignment for the first day.
Okay. So that first week, I guess, is a little less euphoric just because you're caught up in the learning all of these different things. Or maybe that's fun too. I don't know. I always knew that there was a big culture around the seating arrangements and like who sits where, and it's very political from what I've understood. But so that's what you're learning the first week.
Exactly. Yeah, there's table heads, table feet, and for morning worship, it's like their job to like look at the young kids and make sure they're doing well. Look at the married couples, make sure they're showing up, that they're not fighting with each other, and be like eyes on the floor, to make sure that there's boots on the ground to make sure everybody's doing okay. Because as much as I don't think we've talked about this a lot, but monitoring is another huge part of the Jehovah's Witness culture. They monitor a lot of what you do. I know of a lot of elders go on Facebook and they search people up in their congregation to see what they're posting and things like that. So monitoring's huge. So a lot of the seating arrangements have to do with monitoring, so that we're monitoring all the Bethelites to make sure that nothing wrong's going on.
How are you supposed to know if brother and sister Smith had a tiff? How are you supposed to know if they argued? Are you? I mean, are you just trying to read people's body language?
Yeah.
And if they did, are
Yeah.
you supposed to then get in the middle of it and like counsel them or take them off? Or
No, it's more like just to keep an eye on things, and like eventually you could, like, pull the guy aside, like, hey, what's going on? You need any help? Need any advice or whatever? And
okay.
I remember, like, when because I first started at Patterson, New York, then I got transferred to Fishkill, and I was asked to be a table head over in Fishkill. So one day a week, because that was a very unique setup. That was weird. But one day a week, I was asked to be a table head, and I have to drive like 15 minutes over to this complex that held brand new Bethelites that were working to build the new headquarters in Warwick. And I would have to be their like table head. And it was my job to make sure that they were showing up, that they weren't talking inappropriately, that they weren't cracking rude jokes, that they were dressing appropriately. And if I saw any of that wrong, it'd be my job to say, hey, brother so-and-so, stay a little longer real quick and give them a little counsel. So yeah, I mean, there definitely is a hierarchy with regards to the table seating. Yeah.
Okay. So you have now gone through your training. Where do you go from there?
So I started in laundry. I worked there for like 3-4 months, ironing, pressing clothes. I learned how to iron and press women's clothes as well. So I mean, there were some skills I learned there. That was good. That's where I started for the first few months. Then the infirmary in Patterson was kind of expanding a little bit. At the time, the infirmary in Walk Hill, New York, was basically housing all of the senior residents that had grown old and were kind of nearing, passing away. And Patterson wanted to kind of have their own infirmary as well that took care of their own elderly individuals instead of sending them out to another facility under the branch, So I got accepted to the infirmary to work as a patient care attendant, similar to a certified nursing assistant.
Okay.
It was a 2-week-long course. We did training, hands-on training, like with volunteers and stuff, and then shadowed, and we were trained to be nursing assistants and take care of the elderly until they reached their end of their life. And I did that job for years, and I have taken care of more, unfortunately, dying people than I would like to admit. It was a very tough assignment. These friends, they gave their life, to this organization. And, at the time, in my experience that we'll talk about later, is very different than this. At the time, it was so beautiful to me to see how the organization was rallying around these people and providing these like young men and young women to like take care of them as they died. And I think I have like a funeral brochure of every person I ever took care of when they died. And I think I'm up to like 120 or something. And it means doing the post-mortem care on them and everything. It was a tough assignment. You get so close to these friends, and they become your grandparents and everything, and you're expected to just love them so unconditionally, and then they just die and they give you a new one, and it's a tough assignment.
It's a tough assignment. It's also something I struggle to comprehend how they could really train you for. But I mean, obviously you were doing what you were doing, but like, I mean, I've known people who were CNAs. You don't typically become a CNA in 2 weeks. I surprised that they would be able to accomplish that, I guess, or I guess I wonder what the standard of care was, but I'm sure everybody was doing their best. But one of the things that's striking me is, I mean, so for the average Jehovah's Witness, when someone you love dies, you're not really allowed to grieve properly because it's like, hey, they're going to be resurrected. What are you sad for? There's no reason to be sad. Just move on and they're going to come back. And that prevents people. And there's even some shame thrown on people at times who grieve too much. Like, oh, what? You don't believe in the resurrection? Is your faith that weak? You know, and for you, you're getting close to these people at a really intense, intimate time of their life, you know, at the end of their lives. And then, like you said, one goes and they just give you the next one. And again, this isn't something that, like, there are people in the world who do this, but they reach out for that, right? Like they go for these positions in life because it fits them in some way. I don't know if you're just assigned to that or not, but I mean,
Yep.
do they? So you're just assigned to it.
You're given a choice with that one because of the the HIPAA compliance and everything, and because of the nature of the work. They do pull you aside, like, we want you to do this. Will you say yes? But there's definitely an expectation that you're going to say yes, because if you don't, it's as if you're not, like, trusting in God.
Of course. So, I mean, is it really a choice when there's really only one acceptable answer? But I'm just saying, like, I feel for you, like that had to have been really tough to be put in that position in an organization that doesn't allow you to properly grieve, and without a lot of choice. That's just a really tough job for anyone. I mean, like, hospice care workers are really special people. That's not something that just everyone should be thrown into.
No, I hated hospitals. I mean, I definitely did. I never, there's this group called the Hospital Liaison Committee. And, I used to, like, say prayers, like, if I ever become an elder, I pray that I never get accepted to the Hospital Liaison Committee because I hate hospitals. And then, of course, I go to the infirmary. And then it only got worse after that. I think maybe like 4 years into Bethel, I was involved in a boating accident where an 18-year-old girl drowned. And I had to give her CPR for like 17 minutes. It's a long story, but it devastated me. She died. There's nothing I could do about it. And at the end of it, their thought was, you handled yourself so well in the situation. Why don't we put you through EMT school? What was I going to say? I'm not going to say no, but that was the last thing I wanted to do.
So, good God, they seize upon people's pain. You went through this traumatic thing, and instead of, well, let me ask you, how much counseling and grief counseling or anything did they ever give you?
Zero. There was one time where a branch committee member came to see me. I was in a meeting at the time, and he left, never came back.
They're just so inhuman. You're a human being. You're not a robot. And just because you were able to perform CPR on that poor person for 17 minutes does not mean that you then. So then the witnesses decided to Bethel decided to send you to EMT school so that you could do even more of this work that you weren't sure you ever wanted to do in the first place.
Exactly. So I was an on-site Bethel EMT. So, we have, like, I want to say, what, like 5,000 on the complex? No. Sorry, like 2,000 on the Patterson complex or so. So you're supposed to be the EMT for them. And this is what started me on call. And I'm going to tell you these on-call arrangements, this is where I started to lose it a little bit. This is where Bethel lost me. You're on call as an EMT. Whenever that pager goes off, you got to wake up and go, and again, eventually I started getting into, like, more responsibility, and the infirmary transferred me into more administrative roles. So I began doing staff scheduling for a while. Then I moved into secretarial work for the overseer of the whole department. So I started getting more responsibility, being on call for certain things for that, and then being on call as an EMT as well. And it's just the pagers going off at night. You know, you're getting woken up in the middle of the night. You have to go, and you have to do all this stuff that, again, medically, I didn't even want to be in the medical field. But so.
And that's a field you really shouldn't be in if you don't want to be in.
Yeah. And eventually it just got worse and worse. So they hit a project, I can't remember what year it was, but maybe 4 or 5 years ago, where they were selling their buildings in Brooklyn and moving up to Fishkill and Warwick, New York. So Warwick, New York is now like the new like big headquarters building. And then Fishkill is this like really interesting sublet branch that kind of like doesn't make a lot of sense, but it houses the computer departments because they can work remotely because they purchased an apartment complex, a condo complex. So they have everybody working there remotely for like IT work out of their condos. And then they also have two senior living facilities. So it was my job to kind of help them move about 150 elderly individuals from the Brooklyn infirmary, where they were being taken care of, into the Fishkill long-term care buildings. That came with a lot of challenges because as much as, you know, we think of Jehovah's Witnesses as these like meek, humble people, once they're in Bethel for 50 years, they're no different than anybody else who's some high-end executive. They walk all over you. So, you know, I was just a peon to make everything happen. Then the on-call went to once a week every month, 24/7. So you'd have 3 weeks where you would work 8 to 5 and any other appropriate overtime. And then you'd have 1 week where you're on call for 24/7 for any needs of any Bethelite, like in the entire complex. It was exhausting. And then they started bringing in outside consultants that were so rude and demeaning. And it was just like, we didn't matter. We were an afterthought. And you're basically just told that you do what you're told. And if you question anything, if you speak up, you say like, look, this is difficult. Yeah, I know it's difficult, but you know, think about what you're doing for Jehovah. Think about what you're doing for Jehovah. And you can only push yourself so much. And I know
were you expected to keep up? I mean, I know that Bethel has this well, maybe I'm wrong. Again, never been there. But I think that it supposedly has this fairly intense spiritual routine that is expected of you. Yes. You know, again, being at the 7:15 breakfast and morning meeting and all that stuff. And then you're supposed to also be a member of an outside congregation, correct?
Yep. So yeah, you nailed it.
So how in the world are you supposed to be working full-time in the infirmary, be working full-time for Jehovah in his service, as far as being at all these meetings and studying for things, and you're supposed to read the Bible all the way through in your first year, and like all these different things that are put before you? How are you supposed to, I mean, again, I think it's just more workaholism, right? Yes. Like, aren't you just working pretty much 24/7?
Yes. But that work ethic doesn't even just start at Bethel. It increases at Bethel. Right. But I think you nailed on a really good point about Jehovah's Witnesses. And this is something that I learned. And it's so funny that I learned this so late in life. You feel like an idiot sometimes when you leave the religion and you look back on it. But anyway, I learned this. I learned that there's a reason they want you to study so much, even in the congregations, right? It's not just Bethelites, right? They want you to study every day. They
Sure.
want you to be at your 3 meetings a week. They want you to go out in the ministry. They want you to read your Bible every year. They want you to read every new publication that comes out of their district conventions. They want you to read, study, read, and study. How else do you brainwash somebody?
They get you to brainwash yourself.
Self, exactly. There's no way to do it besides immersing them in what you're telling them is the truth. Provide them a happy family community environment, immerse them in information, and now you've got somebody, you've got a follower. And that's what they're doing. And it's amazing when I look back at it, you're right. My time spent was time completely devoted to studying. We haven't even talked about Bethel Entrance School yet. I mean, that's like a 1 or 2 week program where you're studying for like a month or two beforehand every night for that. You still have, your 3 meetings to study for. You have morning worship. You have Monday night watchtower study in Bethel. So after your long work day, you have to go do an hour-long watchtower study. And then sometimes they even have a talk after that lasts 45 minutes longer. So you're getting home at like 9 o'clock. They have dish duties as well. So even like your weekends, you'll have to go clean dishes some weekends. It's just your personal life is very limited. And on top of that, you're making $140 to $150 a month and expected to buy your own deodorant, buy your own car insurance, buy your own gas, pay for your own car. And oh yeah, have we talked about going out to eat yet? Yeah, don't try that. That's not going to work. Not on that budget.
How could you afford to?
Exactly. So it's workaholism. You nailed it.
Yeah. It's just constant working. It's slaving for Jehovah.
Exactly.
So you're involved in this life where you're, literally just basically almost being worked to death. Well, let me ask you. So I'm trying to ride a line here. This is your story. This is not just, oh, I'm super curious about Bethel, and I'm going to pepper you with questions because I want to present that in the context of your story and not just all the things that I could possibly think of to ask because I've never been there, right? But I am curious as to certain aspects of it, I'm sure, like anyone would be who's never been there. I've interviewed people who've been like in Scientology and the Sea Org and such. So, it's interesting to see what it's like in the headquarters of these places. But I want to make sure I keep this in the context of your story. And you've got all of this going on, but like, how do you, because you didn't grow up financially secure. So were you honestly making it on that $140 stipend to do things like have gas in your car and insurance and such? Or I've always heard that there are like these side gigs people are given where they make money and such.
They call them G jobs.
What's that?
They call them G jobs.
G jobs. Okay.
Yeah.
What's G stand for?
I can't remember now.
Okay.
But basically it means it's a job that you do outside of Bethel for money. Technically, you're supposed to take either a whole vacation day or a half vacation day in order to do a G job for financial purposes, because you're sworn under when you go to the religious order,
the vow of poverty.
You're under the vow of poverty. So to break the vow of poverty, you have to take a vacation day out of your personal time to break that vow. That's the way that they view it.
Wait a minute. I don't know. It's just.
Yeah. And then you can go work for the whole weekend if you take a half vacation day on Friday. So that's how that works. But,
okay.
You have to find those, and be willing to work them. So that's an option. I mean, at the same time, though, this area is filled with not only you got Patterson, Fishkill, Wallkill, Warwick, that you're talking 5,000 to 6,000 Bethelites in that area. And if anybody's from New York who might be listening, you'll know that that's 5,000 people in that area. They're all going to be competing for the same jobs. That's not a huge area. So you'll find with the Bethelite status comes a certain amount of generosity from other people. So, as I would go back to like Cleveland for conventions, people would throw money at me because they knew I was the Bethelite. You go to certain congregations, I would give like a talk for the memorial each year. I went out to Louisiana one year. They just showered us with just attention and money and food and everything. So with the status of a Bethelite comes some of that, like people donating to you, but that comes later. When you're a new Bethelite, you're struggling unless you either have family support or congregation support. I had some congregation support a little bit to help me get by. But other than that, you've got to find ways to like network and work it out yourself. But
so I'm guessing your dad, who was so proud of all of this, was not showering you with cash. Allow me to break in here for a second. This channel is made possible by you, the listener. If you appreciate what we're doing here, please consider supporting at patreon.com/shunned, or leave a review on iTunes or other platforms. Like and subscribe. All those things help the channel. If you're looking for merch, you can go get some Shunned swag from the shunnedpodcast.com website, or reach out there to be on the show. If you're looking for more ex-Jehovah's Witness content, I'll recommend my first podcast called This JW Life. You can find that on podcast apps as well as YouTube. And if you're feeling stuck in life, struggling to find happiness and community, maybe you're haunted by the past, beating yourself up, unsure of who you are or what you even want out of life now that you've lost this one identity that was given to you by a cult, reach out through my other sites like exjwhelp.com, that's exjwhelp.com, or storyworkscoaching.com. And let's see about working together to help you find a life that fits you and who you are, maybe for the first time ever. And now, back to our guest.
Unfortunately not, no.
Okay.
No, I was not one of them. Okay. You'd have like the Bethelites to be coming in like, a brand new car, like they have like a BMW, like SUV. And I'm like, okay, so somebody's parents have money, but that's not me.
No. So you end up just working and working and working while you're there. Did you enjoy the work while you were doing it? Was that work? I know it was tough, and I know that you were burned out, but did you have, you talked about the euphoria of being there. Did you feel on some level like, but look what I'm doing and how special it is? And were you feeling special doing it? And was that driving you to some degree?
Absolutely. You talk about these memorial services where you're taught not to grieve, right? And not only did I get all of those every time somebody died, this encouragement of like, and we thank our infirmary staff and every time you're like, yeah, that's me, and you get excited. And there was a level of appreciation to it. And I remember I was involved in Family Night, which is like a Bethel-wide talent show. And we did like a song for all of the elderly people that we had in the infirmary at the time. And people were crying, they were clapping for like, a minute and a half afterwards. It was this huge event, 5,000 people got to see us play the song, and it was just amazing. And there was a level of appreciation for what we were doing. But it also added to the pressure of like keeping it going, because you don't want to like bow out of that. It's like, oh yeah, you're taking care of like God's beautiful treasures. Like you have the best job ever. Like not anybody can do this. Like, so yeah, it kind of added to the pressure a little bit, but yeah, you're thriving off that feeling that you're doing something for more than just yourself. Yeah.
Well, it's purpose.
Mm-hmm.
You felt like you had purpose. Did you feel like you fit in? Did you feel like you had friends and I've always heard there's a big drinking culture in Bethel. I don't know if that's true or not. But like, I don't know, did you have a good time while you were there as far as some of those things go? Just like hanging out with other brothers and sisters or whatever?
Yeah, the initial years definitely were a lot of fun. It was like low responsibility, when I was just working in laundry and then working in the infirmary, and we had our shifts and everything, but I wasn't on call, so it's like I could have a personal life after hours. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. There is a drinking culture there. It's very true. They have a lot of discussions about that on morning worships and things like that, where they're like, brothers and sisters, it's careful with our drinking. I had a lot of fun. The culture there can be really fun. It's like imagine yourself, but like it's like college dorm for people who don't do anything a college dorm would do. Because like for a witness, it's like the most fun you can have, like appropriately. You got all these new brothers and sisters, and I mean, hey, you're 20, I was 22 when I got accepted, 22, 23, 24, you're at the pinnacle of the organization, and now there's all these girls that you can meet. So yeah, there's definitely like fun to be had there. But
well, you can meet those girls, but
oh yeah, I mean, you can't do much, obviously, but I mean,
yeah.
You can date them for a year. Yeah, of course. That's how it goes.
Is that what happens a lot? Is just a lot of dating people?
Yeah, pretty much.
Time.
Gotcha. Yeah. Because they're very morally chaste. And
sure.
So yeah, there definitely is fun to be had. And in my initial years, I definitely had a lot of fun. It was just later on when the responsibility like came more and more and more, the work became heavier and heavier and more which any job's going to be like that. But this, when you're not getting paid, you're barely making ends meet, I was there and barely could pay like to even have a car. You start to think to yourself, like, I can't keep doing this. And there's no retirement plan for me. Even though I was taking care of elderly people who had lived their whole life in Bethel, very few people get that treatment. Many of them don't, they get assigned out back to the field and they're kind of on their own again.
So because that's what I've always known that they do take care of some elderly people, and I don't know how you make that cut. I don't know how that's chosen. Then maybe you have insight on that. But as far as I was always under the impression that a lot of people just get sent back home to wherever they came from, with just like a high five and a prayer.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, hey, thanks for being here. Yeah. But there's no support. You're just kicked out and sent back. You're elderly now, and what you gonna do?
Yeah. So there's that. That happens to some. And so I just didn't want that for me. Sure. And yeah, I found myself beginning to question the whole process. And I don't know if you wanted to get into this part, but this is kind of where I started kind of questioning how much I really enjoyed being in the organization and how much I just kind of was in it because I was told to.
Oh, no, I think that's an excellent place to go. I think a lot of people we'll see where you go with this, but I'm guessing that a lot of people can identify with this, maybe just at different levels. Like, I never went to Bethel, but every time I did more in the organization, more was expected of me, and I was always burned out.
Yeah.
And I always ended up feeling like, what am I doing here? Like, I know I'm doing the right thing, whatever that means. But like, I'm just here because it's, quote, the right thing to do. I'm not sure I really like this. So what was your path there as far as like awakening and starting to realize some things about how you felt in that, situation at Bethel?
So I'd have to say, for me, as I was in my Bethel service, I think it started with just the emotional and physical exhaustion of everything. And I started to kind of question whether that part of it was what I wanted to do. Um, it was just causing a lot of difficulty in my personal life. And I I just started wondering if maybe I was just giving too much of myself. And the more I thought about it, the more I started to I eventually started like dreading the meetings. Um, and I began thinking, is there any way out of this? And my answer was always no. Um, because it was just all I knew. And if I left it, like, what would I go to? I don't have any friends in the world. I'm not allowed to. So I'd be alone, completely abandoned. So I was scared to do anything about it. But I started drifting off because I started like not caring. And I started just wanting to do what I wanted to do. So I started missing meetings. I started, and again, anybody who'd be listening to this who is an active Jehovah's Witness is like, yeah, they tell you that in the publications. If you stop going to meetings, you're going to leave the truth. Okay, yeah, that's right. You probably will. There's a reason.
There's a reason you stopped going to the meetings before that.
Yes. And I just couldn't handle it anymore. I couldn't.
Sure.
The ministry, I dreaded it. I would pray that people weren't home. I couldn't stand it. Like I'm not necessarily always an outgoing person. I push myself to be, as one of Jehovah's Witnesses, to be an outgoing person, but I'm not. And it terrifies me to go out and knock on somebody's door who I know doesn't want me to be there and sit there and try and tell them that only 144,000 people are going to heaven and you're not one of them, buddy. So like it's, and then I started thinking about the beliefs, and the more I thought about it, the more just crazy they sounded. And I know the Bible well. I do. I know how to cross compare it against itself and everything like that, just like anybody else does who's in the Jehovah's Witness faith for any time. But some of these things just didn't seem right. Um, and eventually I was asked to leave Bethel.
Can I ask what didn't seem right to you? What were some of the things that were really bothering you?
I never liked the disfellowshipping arrangement. I thought that was stupid. Counterproductive. I thought that putting somebody in solitary confinement for natural desires of the flesh and not allowing them to speak to anybody, we're not talking about things that are punishable by law. These are things that are only punishable by their interpretation of the Bible verses. Right. And even being on like a committee myself, the amount of detail of questions they ask is just absolutely unnecessary.
I have a question for you.
Okay.
Where do those questions come from?
There are certain qualifications people need to meet for certain sins. That's in their elders book.
Okay.
But other than those questions, it's at the discretion of the committee.
So then you would say that it is the individual committee, because one of the things that happens a lot of times is someone has sinned sexually, and so they're brought before a committee, and you have a woman there or a man, and three men are asking them questions about what kind of underwear they wore and all the positions that they experimented with, and who orgasmed and where did they touch and how many times did this happen, and all these things, which is sexually abusive in and of itself. Are you saying that those questions are just being like passed down generationally, like the elders are just doing those of their own volition? Those are not necessarily in the elders book, are they?
Not those questions, no.
Okay. So that's
they do need to establish certain things, like for that sin, that's the Greek word porneia. They would have to establish certain things, and that basically is as simple as, and this is what bothers me, is the definition is quite simple. You can let the person answer it themselves. All right. The definition is any manipulation of the genitals with lewd intent. I'll say it again. Manipulation of the genitals with lewd intent. That's the definition. That's all you have to identify. You could say, did you manipulate? Did he manipulate? Okay. Done.
And so then it's like you don't need to ask all these questions about, well, were you wearing thong underwear or were you?
You can ask how many times, I guess, to establish. You also have to establish if somebody's repentant. You can establish repentance by asking how many times. That's it. You don't have to go into that more than that. If you say I did it like 16 times, yeah, okay, maybe you don't feel sorry, okay? But if you did it once because you were drunk or something, okay, maybe we can talk about this differently. You know what I'm saying? Like, so.
No, I do understand. I just know a lot of people have been asked a lot of insanely, intensely personal questions. And I wondered where those questions come from.
They come from old school elders who just pull these out of their head thinking that they have the right and authority to ask them.
Understood. I mean, it sometimes sounded like just dirty old men getting off on things.
Well, yeah, I would sure hope not. But you know what? It's twisted world out there.
No,
so
sure. Well, yeah, and again, like you said, people, what was it? Power corrupts, absolute power corrupts, absolutely.
Yeah.
As an elder in the congregation, you kind of have absolute power. And so, it is going to, again, this isn't I'm not just trying to take shots at elders. Because I understand that even to get there, it takes a lot of brainwashing for you to end up even in that position, right? But then power can kind of go to people's heads. Like you said, some of these people you were taking care of in the infirmary, they've been at Bethel for 50 years and they treat you like a peon, because they've been made to feel a certain way about their status. There's a lot of status inside the organization for, an organization that claims to kind of have no hierarchy. It's definitely there. So, okay. I wanted to ask that. Sorry for the tangent there.
No problem.
But so you said you've been on committees, and so did that bother you?
It did. I did not feel comfortable asking those kinds of questions. And I didn't feel like they were necessary to determine. All you're determining is the sin punishable? And should they be disfellowshipped or reproved? That's it. So all you have to identify is it, has the sin actually been committed? Is it an official sin? Yes. Okay, boom. We nailed pornea. It's done. Okay. Now, are we going to reprove the individual because they are repentant and feel bad and have displayed acts that show that repentance? Or are we going to disfellowship them by saying that they were not repentant at all? That's it. So it doesn't take, I don't need to know what kind of underwear anybody was wearing to know that.
You don't need a 4-hour judicial committee for that.
No.
Or an 8-hour judicial. I've talked to people who've been in judicial committees for 8 hours over, and then 3 sessions of that, and it's just, that's crazy. What are you doing?
Yes, I've heard of that. I've heard of like parents being brought in for 4 different sessions, having to hear it 4 different times. Yeah. No, it's excessive. I absolutely agree with that. And so that bothered me. And then there's a lot of the beliefs, like they're so specific about things like blood, 144,000, the Great Tribulation and the dates, 1914 started the end of the world. And that was when Satan was thrown down to the earth. And I just started to question these things, like, and there became a point, and this is kind of what started, I think, the whole process of where I said to myself, almost verbally, this might not be the right religion. They might not be right about what they're preaching, but I feel comfortable here. And maybe it's the best way of life. Just accept it.
There you go.
That's where I got.
A lot of people see flaws. I think all Jehovah's Witnesses probably have doubts, but there's a sunk cost. You've already put so much into this thing, and you have a lot to lose if you leave. I was talking with someone one day, and they were talking to their mom about things. Excuse me there, COVID recovery. So they were talking about things that that they saw about the truth that were not true. And they were kind of, let's say anti-witnessing to their witness mom. and their witness mom, broke down in tears and was crying and just begging her to stop, saying like, but this is all I know. I don't know how to live any other way. And I think that there's a large contingent of Jehovah's Witnesses. I don't want to sit here and say, over 50% or something. I'm not going to do that. I think a lot of people may think that, but there's a decent percentage of people who are in there that kind of think, I just don't know that this is right. But like you said, hashtag best life ever, right? Or
Yep.
like, where else am I going to go? And so they kind of feel lost on what else to do. And this is all they've ever known. So it's easier to continue down the path that you're going down. You have momentum there than it is to stop and then reverse course and swim upstream against everything you've ever known. It's really tough to do.
And I think that your comment about momentum is very noteworthy, because when I left Bethel, I had momentum going the other way, away from it. And after, I was asked to leave and then sent out with nothing and everything. And it was just like, oh gosh, okay, great. So I got to make this life for my own. My resume stinks. How do you try and explain Bethel to people? It's hard, so you're some religious zealot? No. I promise not. I mean, I guess I was. I guess I am. I don't know. But it's like, now you're sent to the world to make ends meet. And what do you do? And I wasn't prepared at all for any of that. So I did my best.
And I guess you weren't feeling the love. I mean, so you were sent out because you were missing meetings, right?
I was sent out for other conduct matters,
okay.
mainly drinking.
Okay.
They were mad that I was drinking too much. So I was like, okay, well, I'm stressed, guys, and they're like, okay, well, should have told us, but, have a great life.
Okay. So you're not exactly being treated with a lot of love there.
No. So I get
This
sent
love
out.
that covers all things, hopes all things, believes all things, and never fails.
Never fails. It failed. So get sent out. They just didn't like that. I was like, okay, with a lot of responsibility. And what's funny is, like, I had been over certain, like, elders' house, like apartments and stuff, who drank way more than I ever did.
Of course.
And like, I don't know, they were picking on me because I guess I was younger and not, I don't know. But so whatever. So I get kicked out for that. And I'm told I'm not allowed to, like, serve in any capacity in the congregation for 6 months.
Okay. And what are you kicked out with? Like, is it like, here's $100 to get a ticket, like a train ticket, or like, do they give you anything, or is it just like
they let their moving crew move us because we were moving close within the region? So they have their own furniture department who does all their moves. So they sent their own furniture department to move us. So that was nice. At least we got moved for free.
And you're saying move us and we?
Yeah, I was married at the time.
Oh, okay. So you met
ex-wife.
someone when you were at Bethel and got married.
Yeah, exactly. So at the time I was married to my ex-wife. I'm currently remarried. But at the time of my first wife, we were married at Bethel together.
Okay. And were you there very long together and married?
I was there for about 4 years myself, and then about 5 to 6 years together. So yeah.
Oh, okay. So you all were together for a long time.
Yeah.
Well, as a percentage of your time
Bethel
at
service.
Bethel. Okay.
Yeah.
So then you and your wife now are being just
kicked out,
summarily dismissed.
Yes.
And like, how do you even know where are you gonna go? And like, you're from Cleveland. I don't know where she was from, but how do you know? What was your decision? Where did you go?
Just got to look at Craigslist and try and find an apartment or something, and hope that you can do it within a month. They gave us a little time.
Like 30 days to get out.
Yeah, they gave us some time. Yeah. So you just got to search vigorously and get ready. Okay. And then you go. And then after that, like, the marriage took a toll. We realized we weren't, like, really compatible anymore, because I had completely checked out at that point. After I left, I started completely avoiding the meetings. I avoided the ministry. I just couldn't handle it anymore. And eventually the marriage failed, and I started living on my own and completely faded out of the religion.
So how
And
could you even have a marriage? You're at Bethel for 5-6 years, like over this infirmary and doing all these things. Like, how do you even have time to have a relationship or a marriage? Like, it's just another setup for failure.
Yeah, you really don't.
Yeah.
Definitely wasn't a huge help that, was on call. And every time my pager would go off, she'd wake up. She was on shift work because she was a nurse. So it was just like everything was shift work. Everything was just horrible hours. Everything was terrible.
Wow.
And like once I like got disfellowshipped, and it just went downhill from there. And, I guess I made the mistake of thinking that once you disfellowship somebody, the elders will like at least follow up with you and make sure you're okay. That was my mistake.
They don't care about you.
No. So I eventually, I was fellowshipped for my conduct. I decided, I was after the divorce, I was going to, I don't know, at least look into the world a little bit. Got disfellowshipped, and was told that like they would have nothing to do with me. At the time, there was nowhere else to like really go. Yeah.
Can I ask? I mean, so you've gone from the euphoria of being accepted into Bethel, and I mean, this is the highest of highs in the organization, and then you've been kicked out of Bethel, and now your relationship, it sounds like, dissolved, and I don't know if the alcohol problems continued. I mean, I'm sure they didn't get better, and a lot of times those things can be hereditary or whatever, but you are now disfellowshipped. Like, how are you dealing with that internally, going from the highest high to the lowest low? And are you getting any, I know that the elders didn't support you, I'm not surprised there, but like your dad,
No.
did your dad say any, I mean, because your dad has been disfellowshipped many times. Like, was he available to you? Did he try to support you in any way? Or, it's just such a...
Months later, he reached out to me, and we were close for a while. I'm talking like within like the last like 9 months.
Oh,
and
wow.
then in the last like 6 months or so, I'd say, he just completely shut me out because he decided he wanted to go back in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's...
Yep. So I'm out of his life now. So
Understood.
yeah, at the time I really had nobody. I I think I had reconnected with my mom a little bit, because her and I had to reconnect at some point, but I don't think that was until afterward, actually. Yeah, I think it was after my big event that I need to talk about soon. But I didn't deal with it well. There's no way to deal with that. You're forced into a religion at a young age, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're told that you can't have worldly friends. Okay. So all the friends that you have are Jehovah's Witnesses, right? Then they're all gone in one day. And then you're told you be the best human being that you can be for yourself for a year, and maybe you can talk to us again. What program in any type of establishment would be based off that kind of fear and guilt? Like, if I don't get back, I can't talk to my friends ever in my life again. That's just shaming and guilt. So I took it really hard. I didn't know what to do. And one night I took probably like 40 my medications, Seroquel, dumped it into a smoothie, and I drank the whole thing, and woke up a week and a half later, and had learned that I was on life support. I almost died. I was on dialysis now, and I had to relearn how to walk again because my body ate itself those 7 days that I was completely out. So that's what happened to me.
But again, it happened because you were pushed so far.
Yeah. There was no way to ask for advice, and what happened afterward only solidified it. People were aware what happened. My ex-wife actually worked at the hospital that I was sent to, so she knew about it, had informed other people that it had happened, and not one elder tried to reach out to me to see if I was okay, if I needed anything, if I was like, okay, alive. I don't know anything. And I realized, like, if at this point, if they're not willing to even like give you a phone call and just say like, you tried to kill yourself, bud, are you okay? Like, can we help you? Do you want to come back or anything like that? It was just, no, you're shunned. When you're shunned, you're out. You get it? They even have a scripture that says not even to greet such a person. So
you're already dead to them.
I'm dead to them. What's the point of living to them? So I realized that it was now my time to start life over. I had been given a gift. I spent 46 days in that hospital.
Oh my gosh. How did somebody find you, or how did you get to the hospital?
It's an interesting story. And I don't necessarily always believe in this kind of stuff, but it's a story I was told, and I don't know what else to say. But my landlord said she had a dream about me, came to my house where I was living with some roommates. She said that she was worried about me and wanted to check in on me. By that time, I had been asleep for 4 days. That was the last time my roommates had seen me. So she asked, "Where's Matt?" My roommate said, "We haven't seen him in a few days, but his car's in the driveway." She knocked. I didn't answer. She broke in and caught me after 4 days being completely in comatose state.
What the hell, roommates?
Yeah.
Where are the roommates during these 4 days? My God, why does it take her to have a dream about you But okay, wow, you had been passed out, comatose, whatever, for 4 days.
Yeah. Took me another, I think it took me another 3 to 7 to wake up. I can't remember how long it took me to wake up after that. But yeah, I was on dialysis, and, I had a heart attack as well during the whole process. It was horrible. And I was all by myself. There was nobody there. Nobody. Not a single elder, not one elder to be like, "We want you back." Nothing. It was
just. Did your ex-wife check on you?
She started to. A couple days into the process, she said, I don't really feel the need to come back anymore. I think you should find somebody else to be your healthcare proxy, and find somebody else to take care of you, find somebody else to check on you. So that was the end of that. So at that point, I took my no blood card and ripped it in half, threw it in the trash. Because what's the point of trying to save my life, by not taking blood, if I don't even believe in that?
Right. But you gave so much to that organization. You gave them your childhood, you gave them your prime, in ways. You gave them so much, at Bethel. But if you screw up one time,
yeah,
you can get disfellowshipped, and no one will even care if you attempt.
Exactly. So that did it for me. It was and I thought about that. I thought about all the memorial packets that I still have. And I was looking through them. I'm I took care of all these people until they died. And I took care of them after they died, even their bodies. And you're telling me that after a near death experience where I tried to take my own life, you can't have one person even check in on me? And they still haven't since then. So it's over. Like, I'm not a fool anymore. Like, I feel embarrassed for having gone so long and being duped so long. And
Oh, buddy, I understand, but I mean, if when you're raised in that environment and you're a kid, and your parents who you look to for safety and security in this world, if they told you that the sky was red, then you would believe that the blue is red, because that's what your parents are telling you. And you were up against, parents, particularly your father, who are extremely controlling. Like, where did you ever learn anything healthy, Matt? Where did
I
you
know.
learn anything healthy? What chance did you ever have to see anything different? It takes something like this, because it's like we've all lived in an alternate universe for decades, you know, even among other people who were living these other lives. It's like we lived in an alternate reality. And then when you wake up to it, yeah, I understand. Like, it's like, wow, how could I have been so stupid? Like, people say things like that. But man, it's not a matter of intelligence. It's just a matter of exposure. We were never given a chance at a normal life or a healthy life. Everything around us was dysfunctional, unhealthy, and downright fucking delusional.
Yeah.
It all was. It was all
Hmm.
delusion. And all these people that were adults reinforced it around us our entire lives. Where were we ever going to? And then we were shamed if we had a thought or anything outside of that. So like they've had 100 and whatever years, 150 years to master the art of brainwashing and creating codependency in people and using shame as a tool to manipulate human beings. And I mean, at the end of the day, your biggest sin was wanting to please people that you thought had your best interests at heart.
Yeah. Yeah. To, and that's like, you know, uh, I don't know where you wanted to go with the interview from here, but that's like what I would love to just like tell people, like to warn them about. It's like, it's a beautiful thing when you start. Okay. You get this community, you get this family, you get this big organization that has these wonderful videos that make you cry because it makes you think that the world as it is going to change soon. But once you start to deviate from their policies and procedures, and they're very strict, you know, you're done for. Like, they will drop you like a bad habit. And just like, people need to know that going into it. It's not all feel good, guys. Like, you better be willing to completely embrace these biblical principles as they have interpreted them. And they're more strict than I think the Bible even meant for them to be.
And they pick and choose the scriptures that they want to apply. They have a narrative.
Yeah, that's true.
Any of their publications, you're bouncing from Revelation to Ephesians to
Psalms.
Psalms to Genesis to First John to Obadiah. And it's like, what the heck? Like they have created a story and they are telling you this story and they are picking and choosing scriptures that they want you to hear, like how you are a good for nothing slave of Jehovah.
Yeah.
They're picking verses like, do not trust your heart. Your heart is treacherous. Who can know it? Do not lean upon your own understanding. They are picking certain scriptures to gaslight you, to tell you, don't trust yourself. You're sinful, but you can trust us. We've got it all figured out. And Jehovah is backing us. And so don't trust us. You're just a sinner. You're good for nothing. but we are like magic centers that have all the best knowledge, and the Holy Spirit has chosen us to speak through, because we're special and you're definitely not. And so at first it feels good because, again, like you said, there's community, there's people around, they seem like they want to be your friends, but at the end of the day, are they really your friends?
I know.
What happens the second the going gets tough?
Yeah. And it's terrifying. And I feel bad for people who are, I know there's got to be people out there who feel stuck like I did. They feel
Sure.
like if they leave the organization, they have nothing. If they stay in the organization, they have nothing unless they're perfect for a year first. And they have to stay perfect afterward. That's tough.
Well, I'm going to question, so what did you really have when you were in? Was it real? Was there any depth to it, or was it very shallow? Were the relationships that you had, most of the relationships that we had at the time, they felt deep because they were all we had. It's all we knew. But most of our relationships weren't that deep. I can't tell you. So like if Matt, if you and I were friends as Jehovah's Witnesses, Matt and Mike don't get together and be friends. Matt goes about this far, Mike goes about this far. And what we're really attaching to is the organization and the shared beliefs and the shared feelings. And there might be some things that I can tell you, but I don't really know who I am because I was raised in this and I've never been allowed to explore anything outside of it. And Matt, you don't know who you are because you've never been allowed to explore anything outside of it either. You've been only given this one prescribed path. So we can't really even attach to each other. We're not attached to ourselves. All attachment is insecure because it's all conditional. And I can't tell you, Matt, that, you know what? I like rap music and I've liked rap music my whole life, but I'm afraid that if I tell you that, you might turn me in.
Yeah, I might. Yeah.
Right. So I can't, even the things that have any depth that are truly mine that I picked because I like rap music, I can't tell you that. And so we can't have any real depth to this relationship because we're all playing a role. We all have masks on and we're all playing a game.
Yep. It's very true. It is really hard to like connect with anybody. But the thing is, we're taught that the connection comes from our connection to Jehovah. So like you said, like we're not ever connecting together. We're connecting through this third party that is this Jehovah. Yeah. And that's what you're taught is the most important connection that you can possibly have. Right. As long as you're connected through God, you're good. You don't need any other connections. You don't need to connect with the world. You don't need to connect with other people out there, So yeah, you're right. You're right. There is this third party connection that never allows you to connect with people. So then when you leave the third party, everybody else that's connected to it's gone and you're by yourself.
Well, sure, because it was fake juice all along.
Yep.
Again, we were built to chase love. So, and if we're not getting it at home or there's dysfunction at home or pain there, then we try to get it wherever we can get it. And as long as you continue doing what they want you to do, and as long as you keep reaching out for new things and you're impressive in the organization, then you get attention and you get some love bombing and you get some accolades. But if you're the brother or sister who sits in the back and you don't comment much and you don't give a lot of talks, maybe you have this really tough life and most people don't even know about it. But honestly, you might be the most sincere person there because you're really struggling, but yet your ass is showing up in that seat and you are like so trying so hard. But because you're not outwardly displaying the things that they approve of and that they will give accolades for and attaboys for, then you're just that weird brother or sister who sits in the back of the Kingdom Hall and nobody really talks to.
Right. And try being that person and having blue hair and a short miniskirt.
Oh, yeah.
It's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. They don't care about who you really are. They care about who you appear to be.
Yes.
When I was a ministerial servant, when I was a pioneer, nobody ever asked me how much I really loved Jehovah. Nobody asked me what I was doing in my private time. Nobody asked me how much I really studied. They just knew. And I remember calling the elders on it. It's like, all you all know, like, why am I a ministerial servant? It's because I was young and because I said I pioneered. And if you're 18 years old and you're a brother and you pioneer, then you're going to be appointed a ministerial servant.
Yeah.
And so you all are just following this path, but like, none of you know my heart. None of you know if I care about Jehovah or connect to Jehovah at all. None of you know if I ever read the Bible, which I never did because I hated to read and I found it extremely boring. And I have ADHD, so I'm much more an audio learner anyway. I don't sit down and read books. I listen to audiobooks. That's how I learned. And so, I learned stuff at the meetings and I could regurgitate the information because but that doesn't mean I was playing the role. I was acting the part like so many people. And I thought I was doing the right thing. And that gave me a little feel good action, but there's no real depth to it.
Yeah, very true.
So much of it is very surface level. So many of the relationships, because again, you never even have a chance to be yourself. So how could there really be any depth? If no one is being who they really are, and everyone is afraid to say what they really think or feel, then how can any of it have any real depth to it?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's candy for the soul. It makes you feel good for a minute, but it doesn't last very long.
No, it doesn't, especially if you deviate.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying is like, for anybody who wants to get into that religion, they have to understand that it's like you have got to do everything by the book.
Mm-hmm.
Don't think that you can still be yourself and have individuality and go into that religion because you will be kicked out. Mm-hmm. And you will be by yourself and you will be alone and you will have burned bridges because you shunned everybody else that you were not supposed to shun.
Yep. So let me ask you, if there's anything you could say to the people today who shun you, what would you say?
I'd ask them, is it really worth it to them? I mean, I'm not a perfect person, but I have always tried my best to try and take care of people, to try and be supportive, to try and be a good family member, to try and be a good brother and sister when I was one of Jehovah's Witnesses. And in a moment of real need, nobody decided to take a step forward. So I'd like to ask, first of all, how do you feel about that? And second of all, like, say something had happened to me, how would you feel about that? This shunning thing it's detrimental. And I feel like there is a very strong connection between mental illness, suicidality, and disfellowshipping. And I'm not the first person to say it, and I won't be the last. There is. When you're shunned as a member of Jehovah's Witnesses, you are made to feel that you have nothing left in life except the religion. And you have to come panting back to it like a dog in heat. Like, that's it. That's your only life. But I wish even people that have shunned me could just know, like, I'm living my best life right now. I'm doing well without you. But that was stupid. Like, you could have had a great relationship with me, been understanding of my choice in life, and still had a family or a friend, So, yeah, I don't know what to tell them other than I'm sorry that ideology and that strict interpretation of chosen Bible principles that you choose to select your own way have caused you to leave such great friendships and family relationships. But if that's what it is, it's what it is, unfortunately.
Oh,
but yeah.
It's like, there's so many people out there that have parents who are Jehovah's Witnesses, and their parents will say, serving Jehovah makes me happy. And it's like, okay, but like, well, in my case, so 2 of your 4 kids don't serve Jehovah. You shun 2 of your 4 kids. Does that sound awesome? Does that sound happy? You are forced to shun half of your children.
Mm-hmm.
Does that sound like hashtag best life ever? Does that sound great?
Well, it's funny you bring up that, because now my mom and I have, I think I mentioned earlier, we reconnected,
I love
and
that.
we've been super close since. She left the organization. She is proud of me for having seen like what's involved with all of it, and having gotten out of it. And now we have a great relationship, and it's flourishing, and it's wonderful to have that back. And I don't wish anything bad upon those individuals or anything like that. I'm not trying to attack anybody. I'm just trying to inform people that that is a very, very strict group, and know what you're getting into first, because it could potentially kill you.
Yeah, instead
um
of strict, could we say abusive?
yeah, they can be, for sure.
Yeah.
If you're not following their rules, yes, it can
Shunning
be.
is abusive.
Yes.
Holding conditional love over people's heads your entire life, that's abusive.
Yep.
That's not okay. And taking advantage of people in their vulnerable states when they're 14 years old and their parents are divorcing, that's abusive. I know they may think that it's the right thing to do, but so does the person who beats their kids. Like they think that's the right thing to do, but it's not. It's still abusive.
Yeah.
You
It's
know,
predatory.
it's predatory. Even if their intent, they think they're doing the right thing. I'm not saying that they're horrible people sitting around like, with
Yeah.
the
Exactly.
diabolical plan and the evil fingers there, but I'm not questioning their intent, but I'll absolutely question all of their methodologies.
Yep. No, you're very right.
Um, so I love that you have your mom in your life today. That is that is so cool that you all were able to reconnect. I know what it was like to reconnect with my brother. That was really cool. So, what do you enjoy about life today? What's good in Matt's world?
There's
And
so
is there
much.
anything that you want? I should also say, and is there anything that you are hoping? So, what's good today, and then is there anything that you hope for the future?
Honestly, there's so much less fear in my life.
Mm.
Um, Being one of Jehovah's Witnesses comes with a lot of fear of disappointing, fear of failing, fear of sinning, fear of being in front of a committee, fear of losing a privilege of service because of not living up to the standards, and fear of questioning anything. Um, I feel like today I'm I still live my life by moral standards. I'm still a clean person. I'm still a good person. I still treat others the way I want to be treated. But you can do that without being one of Jehovah's Witnesses. And I've learned that. And I guess like what I'm loving so much right now is I'm remarried now. She is not one of Jehovah's Witnesses. um, and she understands so much, so like what I've gone through, and has been so supportive, and has encouraged me to reach out to others and share my story. Um, I appreciate that. I was told my whole life that the world will just chew you up and spit you out, but there's people in the organization that'll do that to you too. Um, so it's no different than anything else. And I found people out here in the world that have been amazing to me. Great friends. They're non-judgmental. I can tell them what happened to me, and they're not like, "Oh, you silly religious zealot." They're like, "Oh, yeah, you were brainwashed. Sorry about that. Let's talk about it." Yeah. So I'm enjoying just living life without fear and judgment. Whereas I didn't realize how much judgment and fear was in my life prior to this.
Because their key motivational tactic is to make you afraid of your own God who's going to destroy you if you ever step out of line, afraid of disappointing everybody around you.
Yeah.
Fear is everything to them. Afraid of being yourself. Pretty cool when you can start to lean into being your authentic self and have people around you who accept you and love you for exactly who you are and don't need you to be anybody else.
It's perfect. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I'm enjoying most, is exactly what you just said.
Well, I love that for you. I'm glad that you remarried, found someone who loves you for who you are, that you have your mom back in your life. Any goals or plans or hopes or dreams for the future?
I can't say I have any like solid plans. My job's going well right now. So,
Good.
I'm allowed to actually pursue a career now. Because,
Yeah,
Jehovah's Witnesses are,
imagine that.
not really strong on, pursuing careers and things like that, because this world's supposed to be failing anyway. But, just being able to like live a normal life, like I take pride in work, as much as I have things negatively to say about Jehovah's Witnesses, the work ethic that was instilled in me, I'm not necessarily like regretful of that. I kind of like the work ethic I have right now. I feel like it's benefited me. I regret other things they've done, but to a degree, I know how to work hard. And I appreciate that. My goal moving forward is to continue using that in my career, and just to never put that kind of judgment, because I have stepchildren now. I
Mm.
would never want to put that kind of force or judgment upon my stepchildren. Um, you are allowed to be an individual, and I don't see how the whole argument of free will could could say otherwise. I mean, we were given free will. Like, why can't we be individuals? And I think my goal moving forward is to help to instill that into my children, and moving forward, so that they feel comfortable with who they are, whatever that may be. I mean, obviously there's certain, parameters to that, but as long as they're trying to be good people and they're true to themselves, I feel everybody should be accepted for that, not for what some religion says that you have to be a prime candidate. So, yeah, my goal is to never impress that upon anybody else ever again. And I feel bad looking back, sometimes on my preaching work and things like that. But what are you gonna do? But moving forward, I also have a goal too, to reach out to others, who have gone through this. I've been trying, like, on Facebook and stuff, to kind of like comment and stuff on people's posts and things like that and certain things. Just because I feel like people, a lot of times when they leave religion, they do feel like they have no one. And I'm seeing a lot of posts like that recently, like, just with the religion, what do you do? So I think it's my goal to also just try and be more like present and helpful to people who maybe are dealing with the same thing.
Good. And I hope that as you continue moving forward too, you spend time, it sounds like you have already, but spend time working on yourself, because at the
Yeah.
end of the day, you're the one. You can't save others if you don't put the mask on yourself first, right? When the
Yeah.
plane's going down. So keep working on yourself, man. You've got uh sounds like some wonderful opportunities at some really healthy relationships that I hope, as you get away from the dysfunction of Jehovah's Witnesses and, some of the ways that you were brought up. And wish you and your new family here and your mom, wish you guys nothing but the best. Also, I wish the best for the people who've been in your life too, who've summarily let you down. I hope that someday they wake up and have a chance at actual freedom and figuring out who they are too, because everybody deserves that chance. Nobody should live in a prison of their own mind their whole life.
Yeah, that makes two of us. I wish the best for them.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, I appreciate you telling your story.
Excellent. Well, it's been great. Thanks for your time, sir.